extruded text actually starts to bridge the gap between plugins and composite programs that create 3D text, all the way on to the point of a proper 3D application. However, it's not like Blender or 3ds Max. Blender being a free version, 3ds Max being a very expensive version, all the other ones, Maya, Lightwave, all the other versions in between. This particular program is specifically designed for speed in 3D creation, and it has its own automated animation modes. Now I'm going to open it up. It's in my toolbar. It's called Zaxwerks ProAnimator, and it is a standalone animation tool. So I'm going to click that to give it a moment to start up. Now the first thing it says is, what do you want to create? And I want you to see, this is a very big program, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but I do want to show its capability. Do you want to create 3D text? You want to import Illustrator files, which can be extruded. Do you want to create 3D primitives, which is, a cube, a slab, a cone, a torus, all sorts of bits and pieces? Or 3D objects. You can import a 3D object which has been created from another program, so from 3ds Max, from Blender, Maya, or whatever else. So you can import things. There's an awful lot you can do with this deceptively simple program. I'm going to create 3D text just to do some demonstration. And it'll take a moment to load. I don't think it likes the screen recording software very much. But anyway, I can click in here, and I'm just going to put, this is text. Okay, and you can select all of that, and you can do all the other bits and pieces you're used to doing. So let's say Myriad Pro. I'm happy with Myriad Pro. I'm happy with bold. That's fine. But I might want to change the line spacing, so the leading. And let's I'm just going to select that and take that to say 50. See what that's like. That's maybe a bit close. So maybe let's select that and take it. I can make it bigger. Let's click till I'm happy with it. There you go. That'll do. And you can play with kerning and spacing and all those sorts of bits and pieces. You can play with all of that as a text creation. You can also come back to this at any point. Okay, this is just for text. So I'm going to click OK. And instantly it's going to create me some 3D text. And there's the 3D text over here. And you'll see that I've got camera selected, and I've got different modes for looking at it. So if I do tumble, I can actually tumble all the way around, and I can see the side of this item, and I can actually move very quickly. Now this is just a very quick demonstration of what the item's like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you some of the workspaces and some of the things you can do. Now I can zoom in and out. This is to zoom in and out if I want to get bigger or smaller. This is for moving up and down, and you very quickly get used to the keyboard shortcuts for all of these. You see M to move and what have you, and you can rotate. So this is just bringing the item in. Now what we can do is we can actually go to the tab down here that says modeling, and I'm going to go to modeling, and that shows me the item again. I've got the same window up here which allows me to look at the actual item over here, but also I can transform this item. So I can go over the edge of this and I can make it bigger, or I can make it smaller, I can squash it and stretch it, I can rotate it if I want to, and it'll update accordingly. So you can do all of those different bits and pieces without any problems at all. But you can also create custom shapes. So I've got a pen tool here, and I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to click and drag down here, and I'm going to actually just click and drag over here as well. And I'm going to look at breaking these handles, and as with most programs, Control will allow you to change one handle in one way, Shift will allow you to constrain its movement, Alt will allow you to break a handle. Okay, so Alt is allowing me to break these handles, and I can do Alt at the bottom. I can create a heart. Isn't that sweet? Okay, so I can go around and play with all these bits and pieces. I can go in and I can choose an actual point and pull it down. I can extend the length of the line and do all the bits and pieces I want. Now that's created an item, and I can see it over here. Of course I can grab it and put it around to have a closer look. There's the item, but if I draw inside of this, so if I do the same again, if I click and drag here, and then click and drag here, and then again click and drag here, and I'm going to hold my Alt key and break those handles again. Break that handle, and break the one at the bottom. Okay. Notice that it's created a hole inside the original item. So I can actually move that point and pull it around, and I can now go to this item here and click and select, and I can modify the hole inside and it'll update. I can transform the hole inside it and it'll update, and you can do all sorts of bits and pieces, and you can create great big objects. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool, and actually I'm going to say this time I want to create a shape. Here's a shape, so here's a shape I want to create. Click and drag, there's a shape, and I can have a little look inside of it. How many teeth do I want? Well, I can create the number of teeth. I can make the tip width different to the base width. Play around with it. You can make the valleys, whatever you want inside of these, okay? And you can have great fun creating all sorts of bits and pieces you want. So there we go. We've got different items. You can create as many of these as you like, and you can physically drag them around to wherever you want. Sorry, you need to actually pull these handles. That will rotate it. That one will move it. And you can intersect them with each other, or you can move them out. All right, so you can create as many things as you like to create a 3D backdrop, and these things can be moved backwards and forwards in space. Just because I've got them at this particular point doesn't mean that I can't move it backwards and forwards in space. Of course I can move it backwards and forwards in space, and I would do that by playing with the object properties. At the moment I'm looking at a camera, but I can change the object properties. So here is the object property. If I go to object mode, I can actually move this backwards and forwards in space. So here we are. I can select it here, and it gives me a warning. That's fine, I know what I'm doing. So I can move it backwards and forwards in space, and you can play around with these things. So you can create custom items as well as text. Also, you can decide how deep you want it to go. But what I really like about this, and actually I'm going to select the text for this, go back to my selection tool and select all the text for this. I'm actually going to go to bevel, and you can see you can change the bevel types. So you've got all kinds of bevels that you've got. So I can know for a small bevel, let's choose something so round edges, and then you can actually decide how big that bevel's going to be. So you can scale the bevel up or scale the bevel down, depending on what you want to do. So we're creating pretty advanced 3D, proper 3D items. Okay, once you've created them, you can then go on to materials. If I go to materials here, I can actually add materials to these items very quickly. Again, I'm doing this very fast, but for example, if I want to make this particular one, let's have a look. I've got a whole bunch of materials here. Let's go for something fairly reflective. So, okay, let's just drag that one and drop it on top of that item there and let go. It's actually applied it to it. Okay, and if I want a different item on side this one, so let's drag that onto there. It's applied it. Not only that, I can also go to object styles, and I can say, well, let's say I want this text to look like wood. Here is this one. I can grab that one, drag and drop it onto the text, and all the text has turned to wood. And if I want to see how it looks, okay, I'm going to go back to my camera option here, and I'm going to zoom out a tad so I can see the whole thing and move it around a bit. I can even do a render test, and it'll show me how it will look in full quality. Okay, I'm just going to go back to this movement. If you remember, I actually moved this one back in 3D space. Now look what happens if I move around. Can you see parallax? It's moving differently to the items in front. Okay, they're all animatable. Next thing you might want to do is actually, rather than going straight onto animation, you can play with lightings. And there is a lighting tab, which allows you to add lighting scenes, which you can customize fully to your heart's content. So let's do an extreme example, sunset, double click sunset, and you can see that I've got lights. I can change how those lights go, how intense they are, what color they are, and I can turn lights on and off to my heart's content. But you can see already that's made a difference. Render test, it'll render it out for me, bang. Okay, so it's looking great, and I can change it to my heart's content. So I don't want that one. Okay, let's try Melrose. Different look entirely, render test. There it is, ready to go. Okay, then of course, what you can do is you can go to the animation tab. So here's the animation tab, and I can choose to animate any of these items. Now they're all together on one layer at the moment. Okay, so if I select any of them and I click this try button, there's lots more tutorials on the Zaxwerks site. Yeah, we can use that, so I can click yes, and then it's going to play through and it's going to give me some kind of animation. Okay, and it's all going to drop off. Now that was just a test animation, and you can change all of these with these different ways of working, which are quite advanced. And you can export that. That's only 5 seconds long, but you can actually export that to add into your program. So if I've decided I've finished with it, I can go to File, and I can go to Render Movie, and then I can decide what sort of movie I want it to be. So I'm going to stick it on my desktop, and I'm going to make sure that it is I'm going to go for a PNG sequence. The advantage of going for something that's fairly uncompressed, a target TIFF, something like that, or make sure that when you actually export it, it doesn't have any compression. So you want something that's pretty much uncompressed, because obviously you will be reusing it inside of Sony Vegas, and if it's already compressed, when you export it from Sony Vegas, it'll be even more compressed. Now I could have changed my timeline, but 5 seconds is fine. I'm going to go PNG, but I'm going to create a new folder because I don't want to have hundreds of PNG images on my desktop. So I'm just going to call this Zaxwerks output. Okay, select that folder, and I'm just going to call it test. Okay, and I'm going to go save, and it's going to render that out. You can see it's rendering pretty quickly, but I've got a fairly fast machine. What I'll do is I'll pause the video at this point and come back just as it's finished rendering. So once that's exported, what we can do is we can simply shut down Zaxwerks ProAnimator. I have just realized, of course, that I've not set up my sizes properly, and at the end of this particular animation, the items are still on screen, but you know, this just gives you a quick example of how it works. So we've exported it. Now we need to import the image sequence into Sony Vegas Pro. And this is something you need to know about, and it's quite a useful skill. What you're going to do is you're going to go to File, Import. We're going to choose the Import option this time, and we're going to import media. And then we're going to go and find it. So Zaxwerks Output is on my desktop, so it was Desktop Zaxwerks Output. I'm going to select the first item, and then notice here it says Open Sequence, and you actually need to click that button to tell Sony Vegas that you're bringing in an image sequence. Otherwise, you end up bringing in each individual image as a 5-second image in the normal way that you would bring it in if it was a still image. But this is an image sequence, which we want each individual image to be a single frame. Okay, so it's quite important that you bring it in this way. Open sequence as a stills sequence, which is 163 frames long, and you can see the size of it. It's not, unfortunately, the correct size, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to click open. It's going to come up with the dialog box and say, you know, do you want to change any of the properties here? I'm happy with all of these particular properties. That'll go with it. It's a video, it's a PNG sequence, etc., etc. That's fine. I can just click OK. And it brings it in as an image sequence as a single item, okay? So it's not brought 163 images. It's telling me it's going from 0 to 163. And then, like any other event, I can drag it and drop it onto the timeline. And then when I go to the beginning of the event and I push play, you'll see that the animation that I created in Zaxwerks is there, and it's going to animate on and it's going to animate off in exactly the same way that it did before. And anything that I put below it, so if I put Dunstable Castle below it, you can clearly see that we're going to have that over the top in the normal way that you would do, because we've got a full alpha channel all the way around the text that we've created. So Zaxwerks is, as I've said before, a kind of a halfway stage between a full-blown 3ds Max, Lightwave, Maya and all the rest of it, and a very fast, very efficient way of editing and creating 3D items that can be exported from Zaxwerks and brought in very high quality into Sony Vegas. And the other thing you can do with Zaxwerks, I probably ought to have said, is that in Zaxwerks itself, you can actually add background images. So if you're working over a particular image or a particular piece of video, whatever, you can actually bring that in as a background. It takes a lot of learning, but it's a lot quicker than learning something like 3ds Max. You can take my word for that. I've been learning 3ds Max for years. So this is a quick solution, a very powerful solution if you're going to be doing lots of 3D. If you're not going to be doing lots of 3D and you want to do the occasional bits and pieces, then obviously you have to set up accordingly and choose which of the plugins is going to work best for you, or whether you're going to go for hit film or whether you're going to go for something much more unique like Zaxwerks ProAnimator, which is something that I have and have been using for some years and think is quite amazing. I think version 3 is due out very soon as well. I hope you found this tutorial useful and you can just see the power of 3D inside of Sony Vegas when you can actually create bits and pieces, either creating them inside, which is what we did with BCC, whether you create it through something external such as HitFilm Ultimate, or whether you're going to use a proper dedicated program, either something intermediate but very powerful and very quick like Zaxwerks, or the full-blown beast such as Blender, which is the free version, or a very expensive version, something like 3ds Max, Maya, Lightwave and what have you. Cinema 4D is a big one at the moment as well. I hope you found this useful.